My wife cheated with her boss and forged my signature to sell our family home for $350. $0. Now she's claiming I never had any right to the property while secretly funding her new life with her affair partner. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating or to find out she'd been lying about everything. Her job, her money, even her feelings. But that's exactly what happened, and the whole thing hit me like a freight train when I least expected it. It started with small things. Sarah, my wife, was always a little distant, more interested in her phone than in me. She'd brush off my questions about her day, say she was tired or that work was hectic. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed or maybe I was overthinking it. But then I noticed she started taking these secretive calls late at night, and she'd be quick to hide her phone when I entered the room. She'd also start wearing different clothes when she went out, more revealing, and she'd come back with a strange glow that I couldn't quite put my finger on. One night, I decided to follow her. I didn't want to be that guy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She told me she was going to a work dinner, but I had a hunch. I waited until she left and followed her to a fancy downtown hotel. I saw her go into a room with a guy I'd never seen before, tall, handsome, with a confident swagger. They stayed in there for over an hour. I didn't need to see more. I knew she was cheating. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I kept digging. I found texts and emails, flirtatious, explicit even, that confirmed everything. She was having sex with her boss, Mark, and they'd been at it for months. She lied to my face every time I asked if she was seeing anyone else. She told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was insecure. But I was. I saw the receipts, the hotel bills, the photos she accidentally left on her phone. It was all there. The worst part, she'd even forged my signature to sell our family home. That house had been in my family for generations. We worked so hard to get it, and she sold it behind my back for $350, $0, money she claimed she needed for her new life. She told me I had no right to the property, that I was just a stupid husband who didn't deserve it. That hurt more than anything. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? It was like I was living with a stranger, a manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with anything. When I confronted her, the truth exploded out of her like a volcano. At first, she denied everything, called me crazy, said I was jealous, that I was imagining things. But I had the evidence. I threw it all in her face. She sneered and told me I was just a control freak, that she was entitled to her happiness, that she deserved better than a guy who was too busy working to notice her needs. She kept spinning these lies, trying to make me look like the bad guy, but I knew better. I saw her for what she was, a selfish, manipulative woman who used me for her own gain. The emotional fallout was brutal. I felt numb at first, then furious. I couldn't believe I was married to someone so cold, so willing to betray everything we built. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting her blindly. But I was also heartbroken. This wasn't just about the house or the money, it was about trust, respect, and the life I thought we shared. That illusion shattered in an instant. I spent nights lying awake, trying to piece everything together, wondering how I could have missed the signs. I asked myself whether I should fight for her, try to fix this mess, or cut my losses and walk away. I knew deep down that I couldn't go back to the way things were. The betrayal ran too deep. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity, like I had been given a wake-up call. I realized I deserved better, that I needed to take control of my life again. In the end, I decided I wasn't going to be a pawn in her game anymore. I filed for divorce, and I started making plans to reclaim what was mine: my house, my dignity, my peace of mind. I knew this was only the beginning of a long, painful journey, but I also knew I'd come out stronger. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most, and that you have to be willing to fight for what's right, even if it means tearing everything down first. After I found out everything, I felt like my world had turned upside down. I wasn't just angry, I was furious. The kind of fury that makes your hands tremble and your stomach churn. I couldn't believe she'd lied to my face for so long, that she'd forged my signature and sold our home behind my back. That house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was our history, our memories, everything we built together. and she just handed it over to some guy like it was nothing. The first thing I did was dig through her phone. I needed to see if there was more she wasn't telling me, more lies hiding in plain sight. It wasn't long before I uncovered a pattern of texts and emails that went far beyond just Mark. She'd been seeing other men too, apparently, or at least flirting with a few. It made me feel sick, like I'd been living with a complete stranger. The way she talked about her desire for freedom, how she wanted to escape the dull life she claimed I was giving her. She painted herself as the victim, that I was the reason she needed an affair to feel alive. I also found out she'd been secretly funding her new life with the money from the house sale. She'd been withdrawing cash, making deposits, paying for a new apartment downtown, all without my knowledge. I couldn't believe she had the audacity to keep lying to my face while secretly building her new life. It was like I was invisible to her. She'd even started talking about divorcing me once she had her new guy settled, making plans to cut me out completely. The day I confronted her was a nightmare. I told her I knew everything, showed her the evidence I'd collected. Her reaction: she sneered, looked me dead in the eyes, and said I was overreacting, that she was entitled to do whatever made her happy. She called me clingy, possessive, and told me I was just insecure because I didn't give her enough attention, that she'd been miserable for years and I never noticed, that I was just a boring husband, a control freak, who couldn't handle her seeking excitement elsewhere. She spun her lies so convincingly I almost started to doubt myself. But I knew better. I saw through her bullshit. She was a master manipulator, always quick with a lie or a fake smile. I felt like I was living with a stranger, someone who had no regard for how her actions affected me. The worst part was realizing she'd been secretly planning her escape for months, selling the house, funding her new life, and lying to my face the whole time. It was like she saw me as an obstacle, someone she could use and then discard. Meanwhile, I couldn't sleep. Every night I replayed everything in my head, her sneaky calls, her lies, her betrayal. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for not noticing sooner. It's like I had been living in a bubble, and that bubble burst with one brutal truth. I couldn't believe I married someone so selfish, so manipulative. I kept asking myself how I had missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. I started thinking about what I should do. Part of me wanted to fight the marriage to fix what was broken, but deep down I knew it was over. Trust was shattered beyond repair. I also knew I had to get my hands on the money she'd secretly taken, those funds from the house sale. That's when I decided I'd take legal action. I started talking to a lawyer, gathering evidence, and preparing to fight her in court. I wasn't just after the house, I wanted justice. She'd betrayed me, lied to my face, and even forged my signature. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. In the meantime, I started making plans to secure my future. I found a new place to live, a small apartment where I could start over. I also reached out to a financial advisor, trying to understand exactly how much she had taken and how I could recover it. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. The pain of betrayal cut deep, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I had to take control of my life, no matter how much it hurt. Looking back now, I see that this whole experience has changed me. I've learned that trusting someone doesn't mean being naive, and that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But I also learned that I have strength I didn't know I had. I'm not going to let her destroy me completely. I'll fight for what's mine, rebuild, and move on. Because at the end of the day, I deserve honesty, respect, and a life free from lies. After I gathered all the evidence and made my decision to fight back, I felt a strange mixture of relief and rage. Relief that I finally had some clarity, and rage that she'd gone so far to destroy everything we built. The house, our savings, my trust. She'd thrown it all away for some affair with her boss, Mark, and her new life. I knew legal action was the only way to get some semblance of justice, but I also knew it wouldn't be easy. She'd lied so much, manipulated her way out of every situation, and I had to be prepared for her to fight me every step of the way. I hired a lawyer who specialized in property and divorce cases. We started the process of getting the house back, or at least making sure I wasn't left holding the bag for her schemes. The first thing I did was demand an accounting of all the money she'd taken from the sale of the house. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into her new apartment, her secret bank accounts, and even paying off some of her lover's expenses. The more I found out, the angrier I got. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. Meanwhile, I had to deal with her constant lies. She kept insisting she was done with Mark, that it was just a fling, that she loved me, that I was overreacting. She'd look me in the eye and say she never forged my signature, that I was crazy for accusing her of theft. She spun stories about how she needed her independence, how I was suffocating her, and how she was just trying to find herself. It was all bullshit. I saw through it. I knew she was still lying, still sneaking around behind my back. One of the most shocking moments came when I found her planning her escape. She'd been talking about getting a fresh start somewhere else, how she wanted to leave everything behind and start over. She'd even told her boss she was ready to leave her marriage, that she was tired of pretending everything was perfect. It hit me hard. She'd been lying to herself, to her boss, and to me for months. She'd already made up her mind, and I was just the last piece of the puzzle to fall into place. The legal process dragged on for weeks. Every day, I felt like I was walking on a knife's edge, waiting for her to make a move, waiting for her to twist the truth again. I kept pushing forward, gathering more evidence, talking to my lawyer about strategies. I also started documenting everything: dates, conversations, emails. I knew she'd try to spin her version of events, so I had to be meticulous. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. Throughout all this, I struggled with a flood of emotions. I was angry, yes, but also hurt and betrayed. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind. How I could have married someone who'd cheat on me, steal from me, and lie so effortlessly. It made me question everything: my judgment, my trust, my worth. But I also knew I couldn't let her destroy my sense of self. I had to stay strong for my own sake. One night I was sitting alone in my new apartment, staring at the wall, when it hit me. I had to let go of the anger eventually. I couldn't let her poison my future. I decided I'd fight for what was rightfully mine and then move on. I'd rebuild my life better and stronger than before. It was a hard realization, but one I knew I had to face. I couldn't keep living in the aftermath of her lies forever. I had to find a way to heal and start fresh. I also started thinking about the bigger picture. This wasn't just about money or the house. It was about respect, about knowing I was worth honesty and loyalty. She'd shown me her true colors, and I had to accept that. I couldn't change her, but I could choose how I responded. I was determined to come out of this stronger, with my dignity intact. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming myself. Now I'm in the thick of it, waiting for the court date, making sure she doesn't try to hide any more assets, and preparing myself for whatever comes next. I know this isn't over, and I know there's a long road ahead. But I also know I'm not going to let her get away with it. Whatever happens, I'll stand tall, because I deserve better than someone who would betray me, lie, and cheat her way into a new life at my expense. I've learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even if it means tearing everything down first. The court hearings finally started after what felt like an eternity of waiting and preparing. Each session was a brutal reminder of everything I had lost, but also a step toward reclaiming what was rightfully mine. She, Sarah, showed up dressed to impress, all fake smiles and deflective eyes, trying to act like she was the victim. Her lawyer was good at twisting words, painting her as a desperate woman seeking independence. But I knew better. I had all the proof: texts, bank statements, her forged signatures, and I was ready to lay it all out. During the proceedings, she tried to deny everything. She claimed she had only been confused, that she loved me, and that her actions were just mistakes. She insisted she never forged my signature, even though I had the bank records showing otherwise. She kept crying, acting fragile, but I saw through her act. It was just another lie. I had no doubt that she was trying to manipulate the court, to make me look like the bad guy for fighting for what was mine. The fight over the house was intense. I argued that the sale was illegal because she forged my signature, and that I had never authorized her to sell our family home. I presented all the evidence: texts where she admitted she was planning to sell it, bank withdrawals, her emails to her boss discussing their future plans. It was overwhelming for her, and I could see her frustration rising. Her lawyer tried to dismiss everything, but the judge seemed convinced that she'd acted illegally. Meanwhile, I also pressed for the return of the money she'd stolen. I demanded an accounting of the funds from the sale, and I requested that she be held accountable for the forged signature. It was clear she'd been trying to hide some of the money, but I had enough evidence to prove she'd been funneling it into her new life. The judge ordered her to produce all financial records, and I felt a flicker of hope. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about justice. Throughout the trial, I couldn't help but feel a wave of mixed emotions, anger, betrayal, but also a strange sense of empowerment. I was finally taking control of the situation, fighting back against her lies. It was exhausting, but I knew I couldn't back down now. I had to see this through all the way to the end, for my sake and for the truth. One thing that struck me during the hearings was how she kept trying to gaslight me. She'd say I was overreacting, that I was jealous, that I was crazy for accusing her of theft. She kept insisting she loved me, that she'd never cheat, that I was just insecure. I couldn't believe how good she was at spinning stories. But I had the evidence, and I refused to let her manipulate the court any further. I knew I had to stay strong, no matter how much she tried to break me down. In private conversations with my lawyer, I realized that the fight wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about respect, something she'd taken from me without a second thought. I'd trusted her, loved her, and she'd betrayed every ounce of that. But I had to remember, I was more than her pawn in this game. I was a man who deserved honesty and loyalty, and I wasn't going to settle for anything less. The emotional toll was heavy. Every day I felt like I was reliving the betrayal all over again. I'd catch myself staring at her photos, remembering the girl I thought I knew. But now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd rather chase her new life than fix what we had. That realization was bitter, but it also made me stronger. I knew I'd come out of this a different man, more cautious, more aware of the people I trusted. Looking ahead, I knew the court wasn't going to give me everything I wanted overnight. There would be more hearings, more battles, and probably more lies. But I was determined to keep fighting. I had to, because I knew deep down that I wasn't just fighting for the house or the money. I was fighting for my dignity, my self-respect, and my future. And no matter how much she tried to manipulate the system, I had the truth on my side. That was the only thing that mattered now. The court date came and went, and honestly, it was the most draining experience of my life. Sitting there, listening to her try to twist everything, trying to deny the forged signatures and the secret accounts, it felt like I was watching a bad movie. Only it was real, and I was the one living through it. I had prepared myself for her to lie, to manipulate, to do whatever it took to keep her new life intact. But I also knew I had the evidence, and I was ready to use it all. When my turn came, I laid everything out. I showed the judge the bank statements with her withdrawals, the emails where she discussed her plans to sell the house, the texts where she admitted she'd been cheating. I handed over the forged signature documents, and I could see her face tighten as I did. She tried to act innocent, but her eyes told a different story. Her lawyer was scrambling to come up with counterarguments, but it was clear the evidence was airtight. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, reviewing the documents, and considering the facts. It was tense. Every second felt like a battle. I could see her trying to smirk, trying to look confident, but she was losing. Her whole facade was crumbling. When the judge finally made the ruling, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. She was ordered to return the house to me, and the sale was declared invalid because of her forgery. The court also ordered her to account for the money she'd taken, and she was told she'd face serious penalties if she continued to hide assets. That moment was surreal. I had fought so hard, gone through so much pain, and finally I was getting some justice. But it wasn't just about winning in court. It was about reclaiming my life and my dignity. I looked at her, sitting there with her fake tears and her manipulative smirk, and I realized I'd been right all along. She was a liar, a thief, and a user. I didn't need her anymore. I was done being the victim. In the days that followed, I started to rebuild. I moved out of the small apartment into a new place, a fresh start. I contacted a financial advisor to help me recover what I could from the stolen money, and I began the process of filing for divorce. I knew it would be messy, that she'd try to drag everything out, but I was prepared. I had the evidence, I had the truth, and I had my resolve. The emotional aftermath hit me hard. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I was finally free from her lies and betrayal. Sadness because I'd lost the life I thought I had, the wife I loved, the home we shared. It was a loss I had to accept. But I also realized I was stronger than I thought. I'd survived her betrayal, and I was determined to come out of this better. One thing I learned through all this is that trust isn't something to take lightly. I was naive, believing that love alone could fix everything. But love requires honesty, loyalty, and respect, things she clearly never valued. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for yourself, no matter how hard it gets. Because if you don't stand up for what's right, nobody else will. Now I'm focusing on healing. I've started seeing a therapist to process everything, and I'm working on rebuilding my confidence. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I've learned a lot about who I am, what I deserve, and the kind of life I want to create moving forward. The betrayal hurt, yes, but it also opened my eyes. I won't let anyone treat me that way again. I deserve better, and I'm going to make sure I get it. Looking back now, I realize that this whole nightmare changed me more than I ever expected. It's not just about the house, the money, or even her betrayal. It's about the kind of person I want to be after everything. I used to believe in fairy tale love, trusting blindly, thinking that if I loved enough, everything would work out. But that's not how the real world works. People can be selfish, manipulative, and even downright evil when they think they can get away with it. I learned that. I have to be vigilant, that I can't just trust someone blindly anymore. But more importantly, I learned to trust myself. I learned that I am stronger than the pain, that I have resilience I never knew I possessed. I also learned that sometimes the only way to truly heal is to face the truth head-on, no matter how ugly it is. Running away, hiding, or pretending everything's okay only prolongs the pain. Facing it, fighting for what's right, that's what saves you. This experience has taught me the importance of boundaries and self-respect. I won't let anyone manipulate or betray me again. I've become more cautious, more aware of the red flags, and more committed to protecting my peace. I've also come to understand that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what happened. Forgiveness, for me, is about accepting that I was hurt, learning from it, and choosing not to let it control my future. I've started to rebuild my life from the ground up. I've found new hobbies, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and focused on my career. I want to prove to myself that I can be happy, even after such a deep betrayal. I don't hold grudges anymore, I just hold lessons. That's what keeps me going. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: never let betrayal define you. No matter how deep the wound, there's always a way to heal. It might take time, it might hurt like hell, but eventually you'll come out the other side stronger. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's hard to mend. But your worth isn't determined by someone else's actions. You have the power to rebuild, to find happiness again, and to choose a better future. So here I am, finally at peace with what happened. I've faced the darkness, and I've chosen to step into the light. I won't forget what she did, but I won't let it control me anymore. I'm moving forward, wiser, stronger, and more determined than ever. Because at the end of the day, I know my value, and I refuse to let anyone take that away from me again.